Now we're going to talk about voicings. The different voicings throughout the guitar or piano or anything. It's basically the chord like you had, the A chord that you just played a little while ago, which is right here. There's also different positions that you could play all over the neck. And what I'm going to do is get into using all different positions, because a lot of times if you read like the sheet music that's out there, it's all basically in the first position, which is right here in this area here. And what we're going to try to do is make it to where you're going to start to learn different voicings, to where when you start reading music and getting used to it, that it's not where it's written here, it's not always there, to where you can start applying the whole guitar, because this is a whole guitar. It's not just here. We're going to use and utilize every single bit of this by the end of this whole lesson. So what we're going to do first of all is we're going to get into a bar chord, which is kind of a difficult chord to do. It took me about a month and a half. I was about 11 and a half, 12 years old. And it took me quite a while to be able to play this chord. So don't feel weird if you can't bar this whole chord, because it is kind of difficult. But what we're going to do is, by doing this chord, you're going to be able to use this in rock guitar, all types of aspect of the type of music. Maybe if you play country out there or whatever, you're going to be able to use this. And anyway, we're going to start with this bar chord. What you're going to do is you're going to take your first finger and you're going to bar it all across the first fret. Okay? And kind of press down. You know, it's pretty hard actually, but you'll get used to after a while to where you don't have to press down as hard as you do in the initial stages, because you learn how to just put the right amount of pressure on that fret. Okay, you're going to put your third finger on the fifth string on the third fret, your fourth finger right underneath that on the fourth string on the third fret, your second finger on the third string on the second fret. Now this is what they call an F chord. And a lot of people say, hey, do an F. Well, there's also different aspects or voicings of F, which we'll get into in a second. But remember, when you play it, every note should ring clear. What we're going to do is turn off this distortion first of all, so you guys can hear every single note. Listen, because like I said, distorted hides every single bit of what you're doing. There's F. Now you can hear every single note in there. Okay, now what we're going to get into now, this is what a lot of people call an F chord. Well, it's also called just the bar chord. And what we're going to do is we're going to learn, there's a chart that's in your booklet, and also going to be shown across the screen here in a second, that has every single note that's on the guitar. And by you learning this, it seems like a pain in the ass, but it's really worth you learning how to do this. Because once you learn this, then you're going to understand what the guitar is. Music theory is basically understanding the theory of what makes that run, or what makes it work. Like, for instance, if you had a car, if you understood the mechanics of it, if it broke down, you knew how to fix it, or you knew how to do different aspects of, how to make that perform the best for you. And that's exactly what we're trying to do here. So what we have on this screen, which is the whole guitar neck, there's sharps and flats everywhere. There's natural half steps between certain notes, which is E and F and B and C. And what we're going to do is, if you look at it, it says F, E, F, F sharp, G flat. Now that's a sharp next to the F, and that's kind of like what's on your telephone. What happens is that means higher, like we were talking in the tuning section. The sharp means higher, the flat means lower. So F sharp and G flat. Now that's the same note, and it doesn't seem like it could be the same note, but when you get into music theory and you get into understanding all the different aspects of this, it'll make sense to you. There's G, then there's G sharp, A flat, then there's A. Now if you noticed a little while ago when we were tuning, we were matching an A to an A. That's how come we tune this way. Because you're matching the A to an A D to a D, and it makes sense. So what you do is you need to learn all those different notes and just really, I'm asking of you, I'm begging of you to learn that, because it really does make a big difference in what your guitar playing will be. The reason being is the bar chord that we were just speaking of, which is this. Now the root of that is here. It's also here. Now the root being the key note, or the note in the beginning of that scale, or the chord that you're playing in. Now if you're playing here, That's a G. Now wait a second. We just played a G chord a little while ago, which is this one. And this is the same chord. It sounds the same, doesn't it? Well, what happens is once you learn all these different things, as far as all the notes on the fretboard, you'll notice that there's a lot more ways of playing G. And what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a G all the way up the fretboard. And this is just by you knowing the fretboard and by learning the chord structures that are written in the booklet, to where you can play G all the way up the neck. So here we go. Here's a G. 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 And we're starting all back again, because once you get past the 12th fret, you'll notice on that chart that it starts all over again. So if you notice, those are the same note, they're just 8 steps apart. Now what we're going to do is get into, you have the chords and stuff, we'll get into changing the different voicings of that around and learning how to make different chords out of that. But what we're going to get into now is the reason why it is that chord. Okay, there's a thing called a major scale, and everything is based upon the major scale, which is do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And you've heard a million people do that all the time, you know, in vocal singing or people playing around. Major scales are very, very important for you to learn, in the sense of that's what makes up the whole spectrum of music. And the major scale that we learned that we're going to learn here is basically all those notes: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, or do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. The reason why I say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1 is this is theory. And what we're going to get into is there's half steps between 3 and 4 and 7 and 1, or E and F and B and C. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to start up here on the 8th fret. Okay? On the 8th fret with your second finger, we're going to get in and play a major scale right now. Okay? So what if you look on the pattern right here, you'll see it. It's down, then it's up, down, up, down, up, down. And notice my alternate picking. Now up, then it's down, then up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Now in this chord, or in this scale, there's the chord makeup of the C chord. And all the chord is just the notes from that major scale. Now, for instance, that's major C major chord. Now, in some publications, you'll see a C chord down here. Well, that's just because there's different positions, like we said, of that chord. So what we're going to do is show you why that is a major chord. It's 1, 3, and 5, which is the 1st degree, the 3rd degree, and the 5th degree of that chord. Now, I know a lot of people are thinking, oh God, why are we getting this? This is like full school. This is really important. If you really, really get into this and learn this, it'll really make a big difference on the end of this, and meaning in your playing and being able to play with bands, because it seems like kind of a pain in the rear, but it's definitely worth it. And this major chord, which is 1, 3, and 5, it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be in that order, 1, 3, and 5. They can be broken up into different orders. For instance, in this bar chord right here, you have 1, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1. So it's 1, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1, meaning the 1st, the 5th, the 1st, the 3rd, the 5th, and the 1st. So there's your 1, 3, and 5. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start taking things apart. We have in a major scale, which is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. If you were to flat the 3rd, like if you were to flat the 3rd, especially in this chord, you'd have a minor chord. There's your 3rd right there. If you look on your chart, there's 1, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1. So only 3 in the chord. If you flat that 3rd, immediately you have a minor. So you're going from like a happy 1, 3, 5, which is your major. So majors are real happy, and minors are very sad. So like if you're writing songs and stuff and getting into that, it's very important for you to know the difference between a major and a minor, because a major is happy and a minor is sad. Not meaning that you don't have a minor in a happy song, but for the most part it's more major. Anyhow, so what we're going to do is we're going to take apart this chord. We have 1, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1. Here's your minor, 1, 5, 1, flat 3, 5, 1. Now we're going to make it a seventh. Now there's actually two types of seventh chords. There's a major seventh, which is just the seventh added in the chord, or else a flatted seventh, which is just, that's like the dominant seventh added in it. For instance, here is the D chord that we had earlier. We're going to go back down here as opposed to keeping it here. We're going to go down here to the second fret, and here's a D chord. Now let's take all these notes apart and figure out which ones are what. Okay, this is the 1, this is the 5, this is a 1, and this is the third. Now, if we were going to make this a seventh chord, all that we do is flat the seventh. Now there's a seventh, here's a 1, here's a seventh, so there's a flatted seventh. So, seventh chord instantly, okay? So let's go back up here to the C again. Let's make this a seventh chord. Here's major C. Now to make that a seventh chord, it's 1, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1. What we're going to do, we're going to lift the most obvious, which is probably your pinky, to make this a seventh chord. So this is, you hear how that sounds? Kind of like an old Beatles vibe. It's because they use a lot of seventh chords in their stuff. If you pick up a Beatles songbook, you'll probably find that. So you have a major chord, a minor chord, and a seventh chord. Now, if somebody was to say a minor seventh chord, well, if we go back to basically what we just learned a few minutes ago, which is a minor chord, which is here's your major, here's your minor. Now let's make that a minor seventh chord. So all that we did by achieving that a little while ago is by picking up our pinky. So there you go. 1, 5, flat 7, flat 3, 5, 1. Now, by all the other chord structures that are written in your booklet, a lot of people who have been playing for years don't even know a lot of the music theory that you're learning right now. And it's very, very important for you to know what you're doing. And it makes you a step above when you become to the professional level, to where you can actually say, hey, well, I know that chord, or I could just immediately make that a minor. You can change the voicing of these chords. And that's very important for you to learn from everybody, and keep your mind open all the time. And don't be set to where you're going to say, well, that's wrong, that's not cool, that's not cool. Always learn, because learning, keep your eyes open, your mouth closed, and your ears open, and you'll learn a lot more. And you'll go a lot further by doing that. So basically, we've covered all the chords. You know how to tear the chords apart by the different structures that are written in your booklet. Have fun with it. Change them around. Build your own chords. It's really important for you to do that, and I think you'll have a lot of fun doing it as well.